It's my distinct honor to give Jerry Kerr this envelope, which contains a Segway, a very flat Segway, but contains a Segway donated by the employees and friends of IHMC.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so very much. You know, before we begin, we do want to talk a little bit about our Segs for Vets program. I am part of a unpaid, all-volunteer organization. 3 of our members sitting up here, Leonard Tim, who co-founded Draft with me, Alan Massini, who's one of our vice presidents, and Jerry Fabic, who serves on our advisory board, is one of our biggest benefactors. We are delighted and privileged to do a program that aids the men and women coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan who have been severely injured. We started this program because men and women who served in World War II, in Korea, and Vietnam, and who were disabled, they changed the face of America for people with disabilities. Rehabilitation technology and medicine changed because of their sacrifices and what they have done for us. And we would like to thank all of the men and women who served this nation, who wore the cloth, and I know this community has a lot of them, so we say thank you to you too. I want to stress that while we will touch a little bit on the Segway tonight, and none of us have any connection to the Segway Corporation. We don't receive any funding from them. And none of our advisory board members or our volunteers are employed by them. So that's an important point to remember. You know, whenever I talk about 2012 and the coming crisis in America, particularly young people, they all know about 2012, but not for the reason. You know, many of you may know that or have read about the Mayan civilization had a calendar, and interestingly enough, it stops in 2012. And so, you know, in college, when I was in college, we always had somebody that had it all figured out. And of course, many people today, particularly with the internet, they can spread this word. And so the Mayan calendar ends in 2012, and that's how they figure that the Earth is going to come to a conclusion, and it could come with the projected comet that's going to hit the planet. Now, if you believe any of that, no reason to continue sitting here this evening. You can just find your way out. But we would really suggest to you that there's probably another reason, and the real crisis in America is pictured right here. The aging of the baby boomer generation. We've known this has been coming, but in 1946 and 47, the men and women started coming back from World War II and they began having babies. And this process lasted until 1964. And beginning in 2012, as many as 12,000 baby boomers a day will begin to turn age 65, enough to fill that stadium every week. And that will continue until 2029. The projections are by 2050 we're going to have over 90 million people in the United States that are over the age of 65. And, you know, well, people say, well, gosh, you know, we're dealing with, you know, baby boomer problems now and aging and, you know, well, the truth is if you look at the demographics, in that period 65 years ago, our population was not growing at all because the men and women were serving in World War II weren't having babies. And so we not only had a stable population, we had a declining population in some areas. But now we have graying states and As you can see, this great state is one of those that has a high percentage of your population that is over the age of 65. There are others, but and certainly my state, Missouri, is one of those states that has 14% or greater people that are over age 65. But Florida, uniquely around the country and around the world, is regarded as having a real knowledge about aging populations and the baby boomer population. So you guys will, over the next few years, have not a huge increase in the number of people that are 65 and over, but a giant increase in the people that are 85 years and older, because we're going to live longer. We're going to get improvements in medicine that will allow us all to live longer, better lives. And so how do we deal with this coming crisis? We've known it's been coming. It's no secret, it's not like a comet that's going to appear out of nowhere and in the world. The baby boomer population, we've known the issues. We hear about them all the time. What are we doing about it? Well, we all remember the ant and the grasshopper story. At least my parents taught it to me, and many of you have probably taught it to your grandchildren, where the ant did the work and prepared for the coming winter, and the grasshopper fiddled away his summer, and in the wintertime came, and the ant had prepared himself, and the grasshopper was out of luck. And in that way, we are very much like the grasshopper here in America. We have not paid much attention to the issues that are going to be felt by the baby boomer population as they turn age 65 and older. We have developed our country in a manner which requires automobiles for us all to get around. And as baby boomers age in place, and that's where most people do age, they age in place. They stay in their communities. They don't all move to retirement homes here in Florida. They age in place. And as we grow older and older, it becomes more difficult for us to drive. And so we are now going to have a huge population of senior citizens who are unable to transport themselves. So transportation is going to be a problem. Another problem is housing. We have just gone through one of the largest housing booms in the history of the United States. And did we build houses where people can age in place? And the answer to that is, for the most part, absolutely not. We have kept on building houses the same way we built them before. And so people that lived in houses that were built in the 20s and 30s, they had steps and porches. And as a matter of fact, not only did we not change the way we built it, we kind of turned back. We've developed new urbanism where people have porches. They're going to all sit out on their porches, and they got steps, and everybody. Well, as a home builder, a former home builder, I always ask questions. I said, why are we building all these steps? I can't even walk now. And so not only do people who have wheelchairs can't live in homes like that, I can't come visit you. And you would love for me to come visit you, I know, but we build houses that are not accessible to me, and certainly not accessible to the huge population of people that are in wheelchairs or scooters or have difficulty walking. It's an interesting problem, and yet we now have this giant housing stock that is inaccessible and will be difficult. And you can't just say, well, I'll just move out, I'll sell it. Well, if you look at the market of people that are going to buy houses, there's going to be a lot of people that want to sell their houses with steps and find a house. And so it's a problem that we're going to have to deal with. You know, one of the things that we know is that medicine is allowing us to live longer. And will we be able to live a quality of life? Well, what happens so often is that when people are older, they do really, really well until they have an event. And I'm here to tell you that you can go from a vibrant, healthy person and in a heartbeat break your neck. And when I was in the hospital, I happened to be with a gentleman who was 65 years old and had just retired the week before, and one night rolled over, hit his head on the nightstand, and broke his neck. And he and I went through therapy together. And so things can happen to you. So you have to think about how we're going to live. And when it does happen to you, you're not going to die. We're going to save you. We're going to allow you to live. But what kind of life are you going to have as you continue this process of living? We have a great demand on all of our infrastructure for people that are now in wheelchairs, and it's getting ready to explode. We haven't even touched on how big it's going to get. Insurance is going to be more difficult. Today, every time you pick up the newspaper, health insurance. Everything is driven by health care costs and how much it's going to cost to keep us alive. Diabetes cost our nation more than wars. And health care is a very important thing in the United States, and we have to think about how we're going to change things. As our baby boomer generation obviously ages, there's going to be more demand on things like Medicare, Medicaid, social services, because corporations are not continuing with the health coverage. Many are privatizing things and giving people health coverage where it's policies that are individualized. And if something happens and changes, well, you may not be insured, and they may not cover your continuing illness. So all of our baby boomer generation has developed this huge wealth. We have done a very good job of investing and preparing ourselves for our coming retirement. But what can happen is that when you start looking at the numbers, all of the wealth that people with disabilities, people that are the baby boomer generation has accumulated, in a quick manner, your entire savings, your entire lifestyle can change because of health issues. Again, when we talk about the amount of money that is going to be required for Medicare spending, Social Security, these are issues that we all have to begin to think about. And so often, issues like this can be solved in little pieces. We don't always have to solve things in big solutions. But when you're talking about your savings, anything can happen to them. Things can change. They can impact you. And we have to start now, before it's too late, coming to a conclusion about how we're going to solve this. Retirement for people with the baby boomer generation, we are now anticipating that our children are going to have to take a bigger role in caring for us. That's problematic and a little bit scary if you ask me, because I'm not sure that this next generation will be able to care for us as well as we would like to be cared for. And so we're already seeing, in some instances just recently, some areas where we've had some declines in lifespans among certain women, and the solution may not be this. Our organization has really been, for the last 5 years, talking about universally designed technology solutions that will benefit people with disabilities and senior citizens, baby boomers, coming to the age where they need solutions. And the reason we talk about universal design is because universal design is a process where we can design the world in a manner where it's more usable for all of us, whether we're 8 years old or we're 80 years old, whether our hands work well or don't work well, whether we're cognitive brilliant or we have cognitive issues. Universal design makes the world easier. It makes it easier for all of us. Universal design is subtle, it's elegant, it looks good. There's a house where we have steps, but they also have a ramp, which is right next to the driveway that allows you access to your home. It is seamless. And so universal design is not just in the built environment, not just in housing, not just in office buildings, it's also in products. For any of you who ever tried to open any medication recently, that's not universal design. I can't open my own medication. I can't open many cereal boxes. That's not good design. Universal design is something that is marketed and useful to people with diverse abilities. There are really 7 principles of universal design, and they can be incorporated into product design as well as the built environment. It needs to accommodate a wide range of individual preferences and abilities. It needs to be easily understood. You know, sometimes you need a New York lawyer to read the directions to figure out what something says, and he's got 16 different views on what it says. So it needs to be easy to understand. It's got to give you feedback to let you know what's going on, how is it operating. And it's got to minimize the hazards, the ability to create an adverse consequence or an accidental problem that would occur with it. And you have to be able to use it with a minimum of effort without creating a lot of fatigue. And of course, it needs to be size and space appropriate. In the 1990s, Dean Kamen, a guy who is a brilliant engineer, he developed the iBot, or began developing the iBot wheelchairs. The first time in the history of the United States or the world that someone decided to really take on mobility devices. And so he decided, after witnessing a guy trying to get over a curb in a wheelchair, that there was a better way. And so he started to develop the iBot wheelchair. And as he continued his development process, he realized that he needed money. And take a wheelchair through the FDA to get it approved, it took him $200 million. And he took on Johnson & Johnson as a partner. But out of the technology for that iBot came a Segway, the device that I'm on. Same technology that is used for the iBot wheelchair. The iBot and the Segway are a perfect example of the problems that exist with mobility products and what can happen when technology and universal design come together. The Segway is a universally designed mobility product. The iBot is a wheelchair. It's a medical product. The Segway costs $5,000. The iBot costs $25,000. The iBot was developed first. The Segway came along years later in the development process, but preceded the iBot to market by 3 years because it was not a medical product. Now, our organization has always maintained that there's no rational explanation for a mobility product of any kind to be a medical product. It didn't used to be. It's not antiquated thinking. It was a new thinking. Back in the 70s, they decided that they would regulate wheelchairs and mobility products, and so the FDA took them over. And so what happened was that wheelchairs and mobility products became more expensive. The iBot, if it were not a medical product, would probably cost half of what it costs now. But because it is, it costs $25,000. And then last year, Medicare said, well, this device, this iBot wheelchair, which will raise its user up and allow them to interact with people at eye level, reach things off of high shelves. It'll climb stairs. It'll do many of the things that people with, I'm going to try if I can get to the right deal. The iBot will do many of the things that allow people to live independent and full lives, reach things. And so Medicare said, well, those are great, but they're environmental issues. Have nothing to do with medicine. We're not going to give you more than $5,000 to buy an iBot wheelchair, which essentially took the iBot out of the hands of most people, and they can't afford one. So we have worked hard to try to convince people that we need to change. We need to do things differently. The coming baby boomer generation cannot solve our problems through medical products. We must do it through universal design. Designing mobility products like the Segway, if we do that, things will change. It's one of these little things that put together with another little thing and another little thing will change the world for all of us. There are products that are being developed today in the lab that if they are medical products, they will never see the light of day. We will never be able to afford them. And we need solutions. We need things that will change the way we live, that will enable you to live a longer and fuller life. To be able to go up a curb or down a curb, it solves access problems. To go up the stairs. Those houses that you couldn't get in and out of, you can go visit now. These are issues that the Segway and the iBot together can solve. Now, we always have people that when we say this, you can't do that. And that's not the way it's done. You know, we call them sacred cows, and there's been lots of books written about sacred cows. And they don't really care about what the right reason is or what the wrong reason is. They just care about keeping things the way they are. And so we need to change the way we're doing things because here in Pensacola, you happen to have this great Institute for Human and Machine Cognition, brilliant people that are developing great products that will give solutions to all of us. But if we don't allow them to develop those products, if we don't allow them to bring them to market, then it's all for naught. And also, one of the things that is difficult is that right now we have a great deal of this research and development on products that is being funded because of the defense industry. You know, if there's any silver lining in a war, and there isn't very much of one, it is what happens when our young men and women are injured and they come back to us. There is a real effort to try to make them whole again, to try to put them in a position where they can live their lives to their fullest. But someday, that war is going to end. And unfortunately, the American people have a very short memory. And those men and women who served in World War II and Korea, and particularly Vietnam, can tell you that sometimes continued care is not at the top of the list. Sometimes those in Washington forget that we need to continue to fund those folks and continue to develop programs for them. And we have a conflict coming because when the baby boomer generation starts turning age 65, their demand for continued health care, their demand for prescription coverage, that will create a financial crisis which will not enable us to continue our research and development. And so if we don't change the way we're doing things, we will be in a position where we will not be able to continue to improve the quality of life for people and the baby boomer generation. We have things like exoskeletons that if they're developed in a manner where it helps people go pick up a package, go work in the warehouse, and it just so happens that someone with a disability can put it on and learn to walk again, then that's fine. But if these exoskeletons are developed as medical products, we'll never be able to afford them. And they'll be years and years and years away from ever being in a position where they will benefit us. So our recommendation is to those great engineers that we have here at the IHMC to continue to develop great products, but to develop them in a manner in which they are products commercially and that it will benefit us with disabilities. I want to turn back again to our Segs for Vets program, you know, those men and women we started the program for, they're using their Segways to go back to school. They're using their Segways to interact with their families. They're using their Segways to do well in their physical therapy. And last week we began the phase of our Segs for Vets program. Ken said we were going to try to give away 250 in 2009. That's not correct. It's 250 in 2008. Last week we started the Segs for Vets program in front of the Alamo as part of our Spring Awards, which will number in excess of 62 Segways. It is our goal to give away 250 this year. We will complete the Spring Awards on May 6th and 7th in Washington, D.C. We bring these recipients in from all over the country to train them and do their final assessment. We do have Segs for Vets training assessment centers that we've set up at the Naval Medical Center in Bethesda, Walter Reed Army Medical Center, Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, and the Naval Medical Center, San Diego. The American people paid for all of that. Men and women who are concerned about the welfare of our young men and women. We're delighted to tell you that the Veterans Administration began studying our program last spring, and they have now started a pilot program for older veterans. We always get telephone calls from Vietnam-era veterans in particular that say, well, what about us? What about us? I could use a Segway. I don't want to use a scooter. And we're delighted to tell you that the VA has, at the very least, started a pilot program that we hope will lead to a continued benefit for the veterans that are receiving health care from previous conflicts and wars. When we do our ceremonies in front of the Alamo, it's a very poignant place to do it. The community is able to come out and be with us. And I want to talk about one Segs for Vets recipient in particular, one that we lost a week and a half ago. We had a young Marine that sent in his application. He was a machine gunner, and he had been in Iraq. He was 19 years old, and they hit an IED, and Merlin was burnt over 97% of his body. 97% of his body, full thickness burns. Nobody has ever been burned that bad and still lived. And we got the application from Merlin. And a month later, Merlin's the first and only recipient ever to receive an individual award. We flew down, we gave him a Segway. And for the first time, Merlin was able to get up out of his wheelchair and use his Segway. And it literally changed his life. And when we were down at Brooke, we said, Merlin, we'd like for you to come to Washington to our presentation ceremonies. And Merlin was very excited, and because he'd never been to Washington. He wanted to go to the monuments. He wanted to go to the White House. He wanted to go to the Marine Corps Museum. And Merlin and his mother flew up to Washington, and he got to go to the White House. He got to go to the Marine Corps Museum. He got to do all of those things. He got to be with Secretary Barnum, who is a great Marine, a Medal of Honor recipient, and General Eberhard, who is on our advisory board. And Merlin is a young Marine who suffered greatly, but never, ever did he ever complain. He was proud of his Marine Corps. He was proud of his nation. And unfortunately, in a very minor surgery 2 weeks ago to replace some skin on his lip, he developed an infection and passed away. But the Segway changed his life, and it wasn't just the Segway. It was how he felt about the people in America that had thought enough of him to provide that to him. And he is just a great example, but one of many examples of the men and women that we have the privilege of serving. They really, really are profoundly grateful for the support of the American people. When we have these ceremonies down in San Antonio, they feel like people really appreciate them. And one of the things that we tell people, and inside our annual report is a little passage that we received from a citizen in Great Britain who happened to wander by the Alamo in November when we were having our presentation ceremonies, and how he felt about what he saw there, what he witnessed there. These young men and women are true heroes, and no matter how you feel about the war in Iraq, it doesn't make any difference. That's not the issue. The issue is those men and women who serve us, how we feel about them. And so for you, Ken, and the men and women here at the Institute that made the contribution, you've done something tremendous. It will help another individual get another Segway, and we appreciate it. I'd like to open it up for questions. I didn't talk as much about the Segway as I probably should have, but the Segway is symbolic of what can happen. The Segway is symbolic of what it can do. It is serving people with multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's and cerebral palsy and spinal cord injuries. All of these different maladies, people that can't stand very long, people who don't have balance can use a Segway to improve the quality of their life. And we're hopeful that through our continued efforts that it will become available to more people, perhaps through Medicare. We're starting with the VA. And we're hopeful that technology in the future will change lives for all of us, leading to a longer, higher, better quality of life. Thank you very much.
Harold Loesch, why do you think it costs so much more to develop medical products than non-medical products?
Well, the answer to that is that the Food and Drug Administration put medical products through a battery of tests that cost an enormous amount of money. And even after that, there's a cost of insurance. And you know, there's a whole litany of issues that make medical products more expensive than consumer products. But I submit to you that there's no reason that we should have a wheelchair that costs $3,500 that has no more technology, no more quality in it than a $300 bicycle. Yes, sir.
Do you have any concern for the large retail boxes, 100,000 plus square foot stores, and how the baby boomers are going to be able to handle this as far as getting around?
Well, you know, one of the issues that we're all facing today is the problem of convenience vehicles. We as people with disabilities deal with this on a regular basis. There is a backlash because sometimes people that use electric convenience vehicles, sometimes they're disabled, sometimes they're not. And but those that are using electric convenience vehicles typically aren't trained in their use, don't know how to use them, and they can create some situations that aren't that great. And so these big box stores are impossible for people who have difficulty walking to get around in. It just doesn't work. It's convenient, it's cost efficient for the stores, but very difficult to get around in. Yes, sir? Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
The current requirements and standards for designing facilities to accommodate the handicap, which is basically, I believe, non-motorized handicap access. The Segway is motorized and so forth. Does the current standards for design of facilities for wheelchairs and non-motorized things, do those standards are they acceptable to the motorized?
That's a good question, and the answer to that is that the standards for design in the built environment for disability devices, wheelchairs, scooters, things of that sort, they're designed by the Access Board, which is an independent federal agency in Washington, D.C. And the news about the Segway is that it fits all of those things. But they're not really non-motorized because power wheelchairs, we designed to accommodate those as well. But the footprint, there are two things that we design for, is the footprint, the size of the footprint, and also the weight, which are the two primary design criteria. Now, there's a lot of debate about that at the moment because America is getting bigger. And, the Segway may be the most maligned device in the world because there was a group out in San Francisco that called Walk San Francisco that thought that it was going to exacerbate the obesity problem in America, and so they gathered our community and said, "Oh, these silent devices are going to run you down," so there was all of this nonsense about the Segway, but it was directed to try to promote the agenda of a group that was concerned about obesity. We do have a problem with overweight Americans, and that is not just in the able-bodied community. In the disabled community, we have a need for larger wheelchairs, and we have a need for wheelchairs that can carry heavier people. But of course, that creates a real problem in designing a standardized environment. We have to then design vehicles that can carry them, lifts that are bigger, and that's something we're dealing with right now in the disability community. But I hope I answered your question. The answer is the Segway fits into all those parameters and requires no unusual or unique design characteristics to accommodate it. Yeah. Yes, sir. This gentleman, sir.
Excuse me. You made a wonderful case for building universal design buildings and homes, not just for the disabled, but just to be a futurist and understand what's coming with the aging of the baby boomer. Americans are quick to respond, I think, to incentives. Has anyone tried to ask the Congress or even local governments for tax advantages if they are futuristic and indeed build universal design?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, Congress has recognized the benefits of universal design. They recognized it in 1998. They had the Technology Act of 1998, and they recognized the benefits of universal design. And the benefits to society of universal design. But the problem is that nobody wants to change. We've tried in the building industry, we tried to get the building industry to put a simple tax on closings that would affect very little, and we're talking about a simple tax, $5 a closing or whatever, to use that money as grant money to try to inspire the building of universally designed houses. They weren't really interested in it because it's a change. Change comes very tough. It's very tough to get a home builder to build a house that's designed with ramps or without steps in it all the time. It's not bad design. It's good design. It's going to be continuing, but it's something that needs to be done, and those are good suggestions, sir, yes. Yes, sir?
I hate to seem as cynical as this is going to sound, but it seems to me you touched on what I view as the very most basic problem in your enterprise, and that is, in my view, there is an enormous segment of the population of the American people who could not care less about the welfare, get it? Welfare, 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 of the ordinary people of our country. And I'm wondering if your association would agree with that and is trying to do something, political or otherwise, to combat the attitudes of those people.
Well, that is that's a very interesting question. I spoke at the National Council on Disabilities on Tuesday in Washington, and one of the things that I spoke about was an email that I had gotten. We have been, as a organization, fighting with the Disney company because we find it absolutely terrible that when we have a young man or woman who has given their leg for their country, when they want to visit Disney World, they're made to step down off of their Segway and have their wife push them around in a wheelchair. And we do not litigate. We're here to educate. We don't get involved in litigation, but there was a group that did file an action against Disney. And because our group is so associated with the Segway, we got a lot of feedback about it. As a matter of fact, a lot of people thought we were the ones that did it. We were not. None of our members had anything to do with it. But there was one attorney in particular who felt strongly enough about the issue that he signed his name, and I spoke about this on Tuesday. And he quite frankly told me that he was tired of waiting for wheelchairs. He was tired of waiting for them to slow down rides to let us on. He was tired of handicapped parking places. He was tired of trying to help his businesses that he represents build accessible businesses so people could get in, because he didn't feel like they had any reason to. And that's a real, although thankfully small, portion of our population. But there is going to be an increased conflict between that group of people that do not want to be bothered with us, don't want to be troubled with us. And for that group, that Kevorkian slide would be their premier solution for us. Yes, sir.
You have done a marvelous thing in providing Segways to people who have major disabilities, and I think that's wonderful. But the question remains, have you been able to do anything about getting them jobs? Have you been able to change the mindset of employers to have them be more receptive to those people on the Segway? And how can they maneuver about without interrupting business?
Well, we're a small group, but we attack the problems that we can attack. What I will tell you is this. We have a lot of men and women who are using the Segway that are using them in the employment with the United States military, that are continuing. The military has said, if you want to stay in, if you could find something we can do, we're going to keep you in. They've started new combat and transition things. They're trying to do a good job. They are not perfect by any stretch, but they're trying to do a better job. But yes, many, many of our people are using their Segways to help them do their job better. We have a long way to go. And so our role is to try to help those that we can, and hopefully they will continue to help others. And that's one of the things that we do say to our recipients as we gather them together. We also try to create an interaction with them with older veterans, because we explain to them that a lot of the heavy lifting has already been done for you. It was done by the Vietnam guys and the Korean guys and the World War II guys. They came back to a country that was inaccessible to them. There was no public transportation. There were no ramps. They couldn't get in a courthouse. They couldn't even get into the White House. They couldn't get in anywhere when they came back from World War II. And they changed all of that. That's the heavy lifting. And now it's time for you guys to reach back. It's the first time we've had this kind of population of disabled veterans since Vietnam. Disabled veterans are warriors, whether they're in the battlefield or fighting for the rights, fighting to change and help us all. Yes, sir.
Could you speak about the Segway and other similar technologies for children? What's being done there?
Segway had a smaller version of the Segway that they stopped producing. And there are, with all technologies, there are limits to what it can and cannot do. And there are some weight issues for children. But I can tell you that this is going to seem archaic in just a few years. The things that are being developed is going to make this it's going to be passé in just a very short time. If we allow these people that are here at the Institute, if we as citizens can help create a clearer path for them. Get the obstacles out of their way. Let them develop things. They will do great things no matter what age you are. You know, Ken was talking today about a product that they were developing to help Navy SEALs see underwater, and it's now being used to help blind see. There are things that can be done if we will just clear a path, and that will allow the funding to continue. But if we continue to mire them down in the medical process, we will never see them as beneficial to us all. Yes, sir?
Are there insurance issues with this device?
Insurance and what's...
Insurance issues. I can see somebody running this into somebody, and the next thing you know, you're getting sued by somebody, and you've got a class action suit that the thing's, you know, harming people, and the next thing you know, somebody's making a lot of money, and you know what I mean.
Well, I'm glad you asked the question, because the answer to that question is that I suppose that there are liability issues with anything in the world today. What I can tell you is this: out of all of the mobility products on the market today, this one is the safest. This is the one that is less inclined to hurt somebody else. This one is the one that you can run over someone's hand with. And I think we probably give you a demonstration of that if you know, now I don't want to fall off, but you know, if I roll over your hand with my wheelchair, it's gonna be a problem. But you know, this is because of its design. He's a magician, but because of its design, when it hits something, it stops because it pushes it back, and it's just characteristic of its design. It was designed to react like a human being. You know, if I see something as a human being, I'm naturally, you know, I kind of move back, and when I do that, the machine intuitively stops and moves back, and so doesn't have any brakes, which is problematic for most people. So stop thinking in the box, think outside the box, because this is a technology that didn't exist before. So quit trying to make it into something that you tried to equate with something in the past. This is representative of what the future is like, and we have to change the way we think.
Alan's just going to run into my side here. What happens is that as it hits me, you want to explain it? Or should I?
No, go ahead.
As it hits me, what happens is the way you stop on these is you make the platform go backwards. So as this hits me, it turns the platform under here backwards, but in turn stops him. Go back up, hit me hard now. I'm waiting for it. I've done that before with someone coming at me at 8 miles an hour on one. It just stops him immediately. It's not that that's for parties.
Any other questions? Yes. Wait for the mic.
When you talk about universal design, nobody likes government intervention in their day-to-day lives. But when a building code can allow a 30-inch interior door on the houses of those of us who are getting older, that can be an absolute stopper to get into a bathroom.
I agree. And you know, housing choices are going to be important for all of us as we age. You know, for me, it's important. I live on a house that has everything on one floor but you have to be able to get into the bathroom. You have to take a look at what your housing situation is now and what your needs may be in the future and prepare for them. Yes, sir?
Could you comment on how much it would cost additionally to build a universal design house and about retrofitting houses?
Well, the answer to the question, it would cost nothing extra to build a universally designed house. Nothing. In terms of retrofitting a house, it could cost a lot. And so that is the difference is that if I were building a new community today, I would build everything universal. I mean, I would build things with ramps. I would build things that, I mean, porches are great. There's no reason why you can't build a porch that doesn't have steps, that can have steps in the front and ramps on the sides. But creating solutions for the existing housing stock, particularly that which is very old, is very problematic because you end up with ramps that exceed the ability to build them, so you have a yard full of ramps, and then we have problems with homeowners associations that say, well, we don't want that here, that looks ugly, and so you end up sometimes in a situation where you can fight with the homeowners association or you can move, and it's easier to move if you can sell your house. If you can't sell your house, then what do you do? But the answer is, it costs nothing extra to build universally designed houses. Nothing. Yes, ma'am?
When you travel with your Segway, do you check it as baggage?
I do travel with my Segway. Leonard and I have traveled all over the world, and we check our Segways. But we use nickel metal hydrate batteries, which are only available on this generation of Segways. Hopefully, the new Segways or there will be nickel metal hydrated batteries available for the I2 series sometime this year, because they're only usable with lithium-ion batteries, which you cannot fly with. Now, there's no particular reason that you can't fly with the lithium-ion batteries that are used for the Segway. They're very safe, a new technology, but all lithium-ion batteries are painted with the same brush. So it's illegal to fly with them.
How much does it weigh?
My Segway weighs about 82 pounds. Some of them weigh as much as 100.
How do you transition it into an automobile?
Well, the good news is that there's a company called Segvator, and they built a device which is the elevator for your Segway, which is on the back of your car. And I drive my Segway onto it. I hit a button. It raises it up, locks it in place. Plug it in. It charges as you're driving down the road. And the even better news about that, we give one of those to each and every one of our recipients because they have to be able to transport them. And so we develop their cars, we make sure that they're wired correctly, and we give one to each of them. 100% of the profits from the Segvator Corporation go to the Segs for Vets program. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a real civic honor. Anyone else? Thank you very much for listening to me. It's been a pleasure.